And well, thanks everybody. Today we're going to talk to the chiefs of staff for Senator Boysko and Delegate Delaney and Supervisor Smith from the Sully District in Fairfax. Some of you may not know, I don't share it with everybody, but I was chief of staff when I was in the Air Force. I was actually chief of staff for 13 intelligence agencies, and I was also the wing executive officer for the largest employer in northern New York for Plattsburgh Air Force Base. And so I know the role of the chief of staff and to keep everything running, make the boss look good, and you kind of in the background. But I also was a lobbyist for 10 years. And what happens is when you hand the elected official the piece of paper with all the great ideas that you had or the things that you want, if they don't do it in front of you, they do it when the meeting's over and they hand it to the chief of staff, right? And the chief of staff has got to figure out which person on the staff gets it, what they're going to do with it, and how it works. So certainly the elected official takes all the background. The chief of staff really is making sure everything works smoothly. And so excited today to have the chiefs of staff for some of our elected officials. And it's important for us, as we've talked about, as we build our legislative committee, that we understand the role of the chief of staff and how important they are in forming strategy and where we want to go forward. So I know Jackie's got to leave at 8:30. I'm just going to kick it off and go to Karen first as Senator Boyce goes, and then we'll go to Jackie with Delegate Delaney. Karen, thank you for being here. I just wanted to let you introduce yourself a little bit about your background and some of the key things that Senator Boysko has been looking at and what she's looking to do in the future as we come up to this new session.
Sure. So I work for Senator Boysko, and I have since 2016. So we've been at it for a while. She is, and I think the reason you were talking to us today, she's now chair of the Senate Transportation Committee, something that we just started last January. And I came to work for her after a long stint of being at home with my kids. And before that, I was an attorney for like a decade doing environmental law. So you all can ask me any questions. The things that are really important to us right now, like a top priority, is ensuring that we have a continuing funding stream for our transit system, for both Metro specifically, that we have such a huge investment in, and we need to find a way that it's funded and not this huge crisis every year, which is kind of what's been happening, where we have to scramble for the funding. And that's not easy in Virginia because it's a Northern Virginia service. Although we've worked really hard to help the rest of the state understand just how much money we get for every dollar that we spend on the Metro in Northern Virginia. And hopefully that's working. Senator Boysko did a fabulous job, and it was not easy to convince her colleagues to put the kind of money we needed aside for Metro. But we also work hard on transit, buses, and just making sure that people have a way, if at all possible, right, to get to work, possibly not using their cars, because we know that our roads are so crowded and we can't really add so much more volume of traffic without serious consequences. So I've seen a lot of focus on that. And I know you all are called the Committee for Dulles, so I assume that you know how important the airport is. Such a benefit. I live here in Reston, so it is truly a gift to be able to literally get anywhere in the world from where we live. And we're really fortunate to live here in Northern Virginia. So happy for you all to tell me what your concerns are as we are preparing right now for the 2025 session.
Thank you, Karen. That's great. And having worked with when I was in the chamber, we kind of shared some office space, and I had the chance to almost talk to Karen daily. So we were solving the world's problems.
That's right. Not just Virginia.
Yeah. But one of the things that I'll kind of share with everyone, with Karen as well as Senator Boysko, is that they represent the entire Commonwealth. Even though they're here for the district, they really look out for the best interest. And her role as the chair for transportation is really a great opportunity for the Commonwealth, but also for us, especially in light of the airport and what we're trying to do with Dulles. let me turn now to Jackie because we got the same thing in the House of Delegates because Delegate Delaney, and she was kind enough to speak to us just a few months ago, has a similar role with the chair of transportation, but so many issues, so many social concerns that Delegate Delaney has been leading in Richmond and throughout the Commonwealth. But Jackie, welcome. If you could just kind of share a little of your background and some of the key issues that you've been working on with the staff and Delegate Delaney's be looking at in the next session. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me this morning, John, and thank you all. It's really great to meet you all. My name is Jackie Gary. I'm Delegate Delaney's Chief of Staff. I have been with her in some capacity since 2021. I started as her campaign manager before transitioning over onto her official side staff later that year. I come from a background mostly of campaign work. I started out in politics and campaigning in 2019 in our local state legislative coordinated campaigns on the Democratic side. Traveled the country some before kind of coming back home and settling in Virginia. So that's my background. In terms of Delegate Delaney's priorities, I won't go into too much, expand too much upon what Karen said. Delegate Delaney also started serving as chair of the House Transportation Committee since this January, although she has been on the Transportation Committee since the beginning of her tenure in the House in 2018. I think one of the nice things about having Delegate Delaney and Senator Boysko as those chairs is they have a very long history of working together on various issues. And so in this space, they share a lot of priorities. I'll definitely note the multimodal and transit priorities for Delegate Delaney as well. But I will expand kind of a little known fact about Delegate Delaney is that she's been working on her pilot's license. Issues of aviation in the airport are also very high up on our priority list as well, which I know is a big concern for this area. And since Dulles Airport is right in her backyard, it's always a big topic of focus as well. But aviation, working with our spaceports and capitalizing on that and making Virginia a leader in the space industry is also an area of interest and focus on the transportation side. For her as well. But John mentioned some of our social work as well, our work on social issues. Our transportation focus and the pilot stuff has come from personal interest and living in the region that Delegate Delaney does, but her career and professional background has been working with disadvantaged communities. Out of college, she started as working with foster care youth. She was also a sexual assault crisis counselor and worked in communications at an organization dedicated to fighting human trafficking. So we do a lot of work for survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. We're looking at several pieces of legislation in those spaces, making sure that the support services that serve these victims and survivors are well funded, our healthcare systems are provided the guidance and funding they need to provide healthcare to these victims and survivors is a high priority of ours. I could talk for ages about that. I'll kind of move forward. We also do a lot of education work. Delegate Delaney has 2 school-age children. Her eldest started high school this year, which is a big deal, but for her entire time in office, she's had kids in the school system. So we've worked a lot with parents in our community on literacy education. We had a group of moms whose kids had dyslexia come to Delegate Delaney, and we work on them with making sure our teachers are equipped to teach our children to read appropriately. So we do a lot of that in education, and healthcare affordability is the other thing at the top of the list. So recently, kind of the big one at the top of that list is a prescription drug affordability board called PDAB, which would establish a third-party board with the ability to independently review prescription drugs on the market with the highest price hikes, and ensure transparency and accountability for those price hikes. We also passed a bill this year to limit medical debt from being reported to credit agencies so that accidents or emergencies, things that people don't really have control over, don't otherwise affect their ability to get a loan, get a job, house or apartment or car. And then also just another space in there is working on specifically on legislation related to diabetes, whether that be affordability or other concerns. Del Delaney's eldest was diagnosed with type 1 back in 2021. And so that's been a personal area of concern, making sure that affordability and other issues surrounding diabetes is of high importance to her. So just a little overview. I could go on for ages individually about each of those topics, but in the interest of time, and I don't know if, John, if we were planning on doing a little Q&A, but if
Yeah,
that was
we definitely are, Jackie. Thank you.
excellent. Well, I look forward to hearing your concerns.
You know, Jackie, we say the airport, you know, we're talking about Dulles, everybody thinks airplanes, but it's, you know, police and fire, it's retail. But one of the other things is the hotels, right? We talk about 28,000 jobs out at the airport. And, you know, you mentioned about human trafficking, which is a concern, something we all have to be aware of, and something we're concerned with as well. So there's so many overlaps, and so glad that you're able to join us. And I want to make sure everybody, when you start thinking about connecting and knowing your legislators, make sure you understand that you're connected with the chiefs of staff as well. And we have a new chief of staff, Megan. Megan's in the house. Megan, thank you for joining us. She just started. She took over from Michael Coyle. You got to mention Mike because he was here for so long and folks knew him. But excited to have you on board. If you can just introduce yourself to the crew and a little bit about Kathy's priorities as she's going forward. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all. I'm 2 weeks in, so forgive me if I'm if I'm scrambling to keep up with everybody. So I've been, as I said, I've been with Kathy for 2 weeks, but I've been with Fairfax County for a very long time. So for those of you who I haven't met, in the last for the last 10 years, I have been working in the economic development space in Fairfax County, specifically in the Department of Economic Initiatives, creating and expanding and promoting programs for small business development. And if you haven't heard about Fairfax Core, please check it out, fairfaxcore.com. Shameless plug. And we'd be happy to bring staff out to your chamber to talk a little bit about what Fairfax Core is, what it does, and how it can help your small businesses grow. So I am a land planner by training. So my background and my history with Fairfax County has been specifically around land use, which makes me, I think, a really great complement to Kathy's office. Kathy's probably biggest issues right now are affordable housing, and particularly how that affordable housing impacts your ability as business owners to recruit and retain the workforce that's important to you. We talk about housing affordability. I recently heard a term that I like much better, which is housing attainability, right? Because there's an intersection. People know about the Fairfax County housing and other area housing, affordable housing programs, which have very specific regulations. But I really like this idea of housing attainability. And so that's something that we are working on with our staff. And again, the real big intersection of that is its impact on our business community. And tied to that is obviously workforce development programs. Virginia has the tech talent pipeline, and we talk about preparing our students so that we keep them here in Fairfax County, and to make sure that we're training them for the roles that are available to them and the kind of workforce that our business community wants to see. So those are big. Obviously, we are working with our partners on the state level with transportation programming and transit. I heard that a lot. And Kathy has asked me to get, and for those of you who know Kathy, obviously education has always been very important to her as a former teacher and a PTA president, and then former member of the school board. Education is always going to be near and dear to her heart. Kathy has asked me to get involved in human services. And so that will be new for me. And I will ask all of you for input and priorities and figuring out how we can work together. But in the interest of time, I think I'll stop there. And if you're ready.
Thanks, Megan. that was great and welcome aboard.
Thank you.
You know, almost thinking ahead that we'd love to have you back or meet on the side to talk about the land planning south of the airport, that Route 50 corridor that connects into Loudoun County. And Supervisor Letourneau, we had him last time we spoke, and that's an important area. There's obviously concerns with the airport committee for Dulles, with noise abatement, with the senior center that's going in right along the gate, and some of the things that have happened in Westfields. But and you also border with 28, right? I know Chair McKay actually chairs the 28 corridor committee, but certainly that's another big area that you take. So you kind of have that border on that southeast quarter for the airport that we really need to be working closely with. So that would be
Love
great.
to.
Now I've got a million things that I want to occupy all the time. But if anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your hand or jump in. Mark,
Hey.
did you have something?
Yeah, talking about workforce, thanks for bringing that up, Megan. We at the Chamber are going to be having an event called Innovate on December 7th, and I'm sorry, November 7th, November 7th. And we're going to actually talk about the intersection of workforce needs and housing needs. And it's a half-day event. We've got a number of people coming in, including the Secretary of Labor is coming in to talk about the workforce. We got Dr. Hazel coming in talking about the issues he sees with the workforce as well. And then we've got two really robust panels, one to talk about housing and one to talk about workforce. So would love to have you engaged in that and have Supervisor Smith come and put it out to your community, because from that event, we're going to talk about and have follow-up events on how we can address the workforce needs that we have, as well as the housing needs we have. So just putting that out there for you and everybody on the call that we are holding that event. It will be a morning event over at Crown Plaza from 7:30 till noon. So if you have opportunity to put that out to your circle of influences, we really appreciate it. But it is a way for us to begin that conversation, or continue that conversation about housing and housing affordability and workforce in the region.
Terrific. I assume you've got information on your website, or I can follow up with someone on your site.
And
Okay.
I'll send you out an invitation too, Megan.
Great. Thanks.
John, if I may cut in.
You got it.
All right. I want to share a slide here. So welcome, ladies, and appreciate you all being on the call this morning. The Committee for Dulles is a 57-year-old organization supporting Dulles Airport and its growth of operations, as well as the growth of the economic development corridors around the airport. Recently, I was at an event at the airport, and Richard Golanowski, the airport manager, put this slide up. And it's very impactful in that they are anticipating 30% growth, passenger growth in the course of the next 5 years. Now, what would be interesting to hear from MWA, how much they expect this growth to be from within the region versus transfer of passengers that are coming into the airport just to connect to another flight. But that growth is going to have a great impact, which a lot of that will be good for the region, but some of it will be a challenge because we'll add more traffic to the road network and et cetera. So my point here, and let me get out of the screen, is that we are here to work with our legislative folks in the region to ensure the vitality of Dulles Airport, and in a way to help protect it from those who don't want growth at the airport because they don't want to hear the airplanes, even though they chose to buy a house near an international airport that was intended to grow. So anything we can do to support anything that you're doing that is helpful to the region from transportation, that can impact aviation, we're here to help. And so we have an open invitation to your bosses to utilize us in support of any of their efforts that will help the airport and the economic development corridors. So that's it, John.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. And actually, that's another good segue. I don't know if you want to mention about November 20th. VEDP just wrapped up a cargo study, and they're gonna hit the ground in December. Fortunately, Scott has helped us secure a pre-briefing, so we'll get the word out first on the status of the cargo study. Another great opportunity, right? I don't know what the study says. Some of our members have been part of it, but it's an opportunity again for growth in the area. United just announced they have a new training center, right? And I know some of you folks are probably helping and talking to them as well. Another great growth. We're talking about new opportunities in businesses. When I think about the Port of Virginia, and some of the Committee for Dulles members have heard me talk about this before, they do a wonderful job of helping out with grants and tax credits. As we build new concourse, as we look at adding in the potential for cargo, we look at new training centers, there's lots of growth and opportunity. But we as Committee for Dulles probably haven't done a good enough job about helping position the chiefs of staffs and the elected officials to think about how to leverage, much like the Port of Virginia, with some tax credits and grants to help grow. And ultimately for those members, Jackie, you talked about affordable housing. Jeff Bentley's in here talking about mortgage rates and what are we doing and what's the future, right? So I always ask, Jeff to kind of like, Jeff, where are we at? Things are moving. What's the opportunity? Some of those, and some of those folks can't afford mortgages, right? And what are we doing with the eviction rates and things like that? So there's a lot of concerns. If you could, Jackie, just kind of share a little bit about some of the housing, because that workforce is so critical. They're not all living where the Redskins are living in those communities, right? And they're leaving and they're filling up our roads. And then I just putting Jeff on notice. I'm going to come back to Jeff and ask him for an update on where he sees the mortgage rates and the financial situation we're in. Jackie.
Yeah, that is incredibly critical, and thank you for sharing. I know just from kind of listening, well, let me start. Affordable housing is kind of a new space for our office. We added a member to our team last year who has a background in affordable housing. And so we're all, Delegate Delaney and I have been kind of learning and getting involved in the space as well, but also through kind of my own history and background of searching and purchasing a home. But so I think the biggest thing here for Virginia and affordable housing is state and local partnerships. With a lot of the need to address affordable housing comes from zoning reform, which is of course the local issue. And then of course, Virginia being a Dillon rule state, the localities derive their authority to make changes to those zoning issues from the state level. And so I think the biggest way to address affordable housing is in Virginia specifically is having strong state local partnerships, understanding what each community, what powers and authorities each community needs to address those issues, and working from the state level to make sure that we are hitting those levers so that we can begin to work down. And so it's very nice to meet you, Megan. I hope we can get together soon because, obviously our offices do a lot of work together on this issue and a lot of others. And so that's kind of how I see and look at affordable housing in Virginia. A lot of the reforms are going to need to come from the localities, but we as state partners need to make sure that we are giving our partners there the tools that they need to address. And really just build. I think probably the biggest issue in developing workforce and developing authority is just we don't have enough homes in the places that people want to live and work. And so we need to pull those levers and get to building. And then just as a side note, I also wanted to interject on the MAWA and Dulles. I should have mentioned earlier that Delegate Delaney also co-chairs the Aviation Caucus. And so we're starting to think about people who would like to come speak to the caucus in Richmond later this session. So I'd love to connect on that at some point as well for the opportunity for the caucus to hear from Dulles and MAWA about some of those issues.
Great. Thanks, Jackie. And I just want to put a plug in for Westfields High School, just started an aviation program.
Oh,
Scott
great.
Yawk has been talking about this, so we're going to try to get them out here and speak a little bit more. Let me turn to Jeff, who needs to call me out right away because I said the word Redskins, and it's Commanders, Commanders, Commanders. I'm surprised he doesn't have a banner in his curtain, and his window should have Commanders out there. So Jeff, thanks again. Sorry for saying the R word, but it's the Commanders. You guys have the stadium. But can you share a little bit about the financial and the mortgage rates and what to expect and where we're headed? Thanks.
Absolutely, John. I am with you on the Redskins. I think the Commander name is just hard to get used to, and I will say that every time I've talked to Josh Harris, he's not a fan specifically of the name, so I wouldn't be surprised if something did change. Just to give you a little background, so Northwest, we concentrate on mortgage lending, auto lending, and commercial lending. So kind of a three-legged stool there. And so prior to the interest rates going up, we were doing about $85 million a month in mortgage lending in the DMV. And today we're doing about 8. So that gives you an idea the impact that the rates have had on our industry. And it's kind of been a dry spell. We've seen people doing more home equity loans. So they're redoing the kitchen instead of trying to sell the home and upgrading. So we're seeing a lot of that. And we were actually excited when the Federal Reserve did a 50 basis point drop in September. It's been a little bit of a dry run since they increased the rates. And so the anticipation was that they would do another 50 basis point drop in November and another 50 in December. But then the most recent job report came out, and based on that report, jobs, the economy's booming still. And so that put some cold water on the idea that they're going to continue to drop. And so now there's a general consensus that they may only drop 25 basis points in November, or they may not drop at all. And what that's done to the bond market, if you'll look at the 10-year Treasury, that gives you an idea of where mortgage rates are. So if you take the 10-year Treasury and add 3% to it, that's generally where the 30-year fixed rate mortgages are based out of. And so we had dropped down into the 3% range in 10-year Treasuries. And so that got us into the 6s for 30-year fixed rate mortgages. But now we're back over 4% based on the jobs report. Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chairman, has stated several times that he is very data-driven, data-dependent. And unfortunately, the data just sends so many different mixed signals. It's hard for any of us to be a good predictor of where the rates are going. I will tell you, with the inflation, housing has gone through the roof. So not only do you have higher rates, but you've got higher home prices. And so with a limited inventory, I don't see that coming back down anytime in the near future. So back to how do we handle affordable housing in our area when everything's through the roof from an inflation perspective and from a limited inventory on the housing front? We are trying our best to fill the void, and I will tell you, it's so nice to hear all of you speak about helping. We're community focused. We don't have shareholders. We're not driven by a stock price. We're driven by members. And as a cooperative model, the profits that we make, we put back into the community. And so we're all about helping, and we do a lot of projects in our general area here, but specifically around kids. And but the affordable housing is a big one, and we're more than willing to jump in if there's an opportunity to do a special program or some kind of unique thing that will help drive that. So please keep us close if there's an idea that maybe we can participate in. But I suspect that if the economy continues where it's going, that which I don't know that it's going to be a soft landing. That's my perspective. I think it's going to be a little harder than people are anticipating. And some of these, we just had a jobs report that got revised. So every 2 months, it seems to be revised down. So I'm not sure that this jobs report that came out is going to hold, meaning that it'll probably be revised down and we'll probably be back to dropping rates, which should help the mortgage crisis. I'll shut up now.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. In the military, you always start with an intelligence briefing, trying to plan out the future and map the battlefield. You are the expert in intelligence. I mean, sometimes I just scratch my head. I'm like, this is genius to have this kind of insight. That's why we have the committees for Dallas. That's why these civic organizations come together and share the insight as to what's happened in each of our industries. So that was pure gold, not only for us as businesses, but the elected officials to hear from you, Jeff. So thanks so much.
Thanks, John.
We got a few minutes left, but Karen, can you talk a little bit about the process? Because I want to make sure folks understand your work, and you can only submit so many bills.
Yeah, I can do that. First, I want to jump in on the housing a bit though too, because we have a different approach we're taking. It needs so much at so many levels. We have been working for a few years and try again, despite the opposition of our home builder and realtor friends, to have some kind of stability in the rental market so that people don't get like 100%. We have someone who was paying like $1,500 in rent, and now he's up to like $4,000 a month. So that kind of like 100% increase is impossible for people to deal with. It destabilizes communities. And so we have local option legislation, which our Northern Virginia counties are interested in doing, but we have to get through the General Assembly. That's just one piece of it. We also know that we have a large number of seniors in Fairfax County who are sitting on their large homes, including me. But when we look at our options, right, of where to live, a 2-bedroom condo is more expensive than a 4-bedroom house. So we are sitting on real estate that could go to families, which would, open up opportunities for younger people. So I think it's a multifaceted thing we need to work on, increasing the availability of housing. But in the short term, for workforce purposes, people are going to move to an area, take a job, need to know that they're going to have somewhere comfortable to live, right? So those are really serious issues, and I'm really excited that a lot of the chambers are interested in workforce housing and that we can really fix this together. Because I don't want to see all my kids moving away, which is what's happening. So, but in terms of process, our deadline is in late November. We have to have our first drafts in. After that point, we have to put our draft requests in. So we have people bring us legislation. Sometimes they bring us the exact language for the law, the code changes. Other times they bring us an idea, and we have lawyers in Richmond who turn it into Virginia. So like we have people bring us bills that are national or from other states, and we need to fit it into Virginia code. So that's what's happening now. We're going through all of our bills, and we meet with, and I think hopefully most people do this, we try to identify everyone who will be impacted by the legislation. We don't want to show up in January and then someone walks in the office and says, oh, I'm completely against this. We want to know that ahead of time and try to work it out. So that's what we're doing now. We're having those meetings. We reach out and say, this is what we want to do. This is the problem we're trying to solve. Housing affordability is one of those things. And so we'll sit down with the apartment managers and the home builders and the realtors, try to solve that problem. I would also just put a plug on the housing thing. You need to look at utility costs too. You really need to wrap that in, because sometimes the utility bill is starting to be a huge portion of what people are paying for housing. So you got to look at the whole package there. But we welcome people coming to our office. So then you really should be lobbying people now, right? Can you sit down with us now and you come in our office or do a virtual meeting? You're going to get a half an hour. Maybe even if you're here, you might get 45 minutes, right? You go to Richmond and you might get 10, 15 minutes. Sometimes you're gonna, I literally booked her last year every day, walk to session, walk to committee, like sometimes walk in the rain to the conference down the street. And people took us up on it because there's not enough time in the day to meet with everybody. And you're going to meet with staff, which is fine, because trust me, we will communicate effectively. If you meet with us, we have a way of recording people's positions so that when she sits down to vote, she sees where everybody stands on issues. So I would encourage everyone to get in touch now by email. You can call, but mostly if you call, we're going to say, please put it all in writing in an email, and then we'll try to schedule meetings. We'd love to see you in Richmond though. Like, it's just nice to see faces from home and have people come down. We especially appreciate if we do a bill for someone, we really want you to show up. And honestly, it makes an enormous difference on committees voting for your bill. If our people that say they have this problem can't be bothered to come down and, and explain why it's important, we're not always successful. So it's very important that you take a request for legislation seriously and commit to showing up. It's a pain to show up because we don't always know till the day before that the bill's going to be up that day. We can kind of predict it, and I can help with that, but you need to know that you'll get short notice and you really should make the drive, even if it's for a 7 a.m. meeting.
Karen, would you prefer to see us in the first part of the session or a crossover? When's the best time?
I want to see you now. If you have a bill that you want us to do, because we can't help you later. But if you're weighing in on something, you need to do it in the first part. I don't know if people are aware that, so for the first half, it's only 45 days this year, right? It's a short session. The first part, all of the committees hear all the Senate bills, and then we switch after that to hear all the House bills that passed. So if you come after that, what you care about might already have been dealt with. And truthfully, sometimes they'll schedule things by that Friday of the first week after 3 days. We've done, I think the worst one was like the second day she had 7 bills to present. So we're really scrambling to get everything finished. So you should come earlier, but if you can't come in person for that, we want to know what's important to you. You should be communicating. If you have positions on anything as a constituent, as a business, I especially care about, I mark all the constituents, but if you represent an organization like a chamber, that gets recorded for her to see when she votes. So I know you all have to meet and approve your positions together, right? Sometimes that's time consuming, but we see that we let her know. Just write us an email, put in the subject line, the bill number, and support or oppose. We have interns who are uploading all that information. So we love to see you and have those meetings. I think that's really important. But the emails are effective for letting us know where you stand.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen. That was a commercial. That's actually what Scott and I have been talking about and trying to convince the committee for Dulles that, it's a regional impact with the airport and what they're doing. we're excited to be helping, but it impacts, as we've talked about, the housing
Yeah. And for
businesses.
you, I don't know if if it's your job to be the lobbyist, comb through thousands of bills and pour over the state budget. I'll give you a hint, like you can figure out which committees are gonna get most of the transportation bills, so transportation, but also finance. So you wanna go through that list of what's been referred to that committee, in lieu of looking at absolutely every single bill, or you can pay someone to do that, because there are people reading every single bill, figuring out how it's gonna impact you. That is a challenging part of it, honestly.
And then a lot of times you'll pick up bills from last year that maybe, so it's a little bit of history too, that helps
Yeah.
you figure out where to go.
Well, that's true. And I mean, it's hard to know what to do. We have 4 bills that were vetoed last year with the same governor, right? We still care, a great deal. It's paid leave, equal pay. They say, all we want you to do is lock up your gun when you're at home. I mean, so those are big issues for us that were vetoed. It's frustrating. So some history, I don't know. But yeah, people try multiple times to get something through. And sometimes they get a short session. If it's a complicated bill and the legislators see it for 5 minutes, they might throw it to a study, continue it, say, oh, there's a lot here. So we have to do our work too ahead of time. So people are working really hard right now, trying to get everyone to understand the legislation, make
Awesome.
careful decisions, right? And you
Yeah.
all need to help us with that, because the businesses it's going to impact, we want to hear. We want to know, how is this going to impact your business?
Awesome. Thank you, Karen, so much.
If
Jackie?
I could interject and just add a little bit to that. It's really important for you all to do that and reach out to us. But to Karen's point about figuring what bills go to what committee, that would also include reaching out to those committee members and committee chairs that may not represent this area, but are influential voices in those committees. Labor and Commerce comes to mind. We've been talking a lot about housing, and so our chair, the subcommittee of the housing chair, Delegate Simon in the House, and the general laws chairs come to mind. And I can't speak to or guarantee that they're going to take every meeting, but I think I can say generally that people want to hear from the communities and the businesses that these laws and legislations will impact, and welcome that input. And so if you see something, reach out to us as, the transportation chairs, as the people who represent your businesses, but also don't be afraid to reach out to those other committee chairs in which legislation you might care about might be heard as well.
That's
Awesome.
true.
Thank you.
Yeah, we
Thank you,
took a
Jack.
lot of meetings with her as transportation chair. Definitely do that. We had meetings with 20 people in the room where we tried to get, almost like facilitate a settlement on some of the transportation bills, so they could agree with each other. That's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good, I think both with being chairs of transportation allows you to reach out for the rest of the Commonwealth and maybe get some help on other bills that you're trying to do, since they're trying to help with their road networks and infrastructure. Scott, I'm sensitive to time. I appreciate you letting us spend the time this morning with the Committee for Dulles on the Legislative Committee. Karen, Jackie, Megan, thank you so much. Just to reiterate the importance of the teamwork that's involved. It's not just the elected official, it's a teamwork to get a lot of work done. And if you're not engaged, then you're missing out on an opportunity. Thank you so much, Scott. I'll turn it over for you for the wrap up and sign off, but I just want to personally thank everybody for attending, and do call out Kevin LeBlanc, council member from the town of Herndon, and Brandon, who actually is going to be the incoming president for the chamber, for the Committee for Dulles. Scott.
All right. Thank you, John. Just a couple of things, reminders to our committee members that tomorrow night is the Committee for Dulles Member Appreciation event over at the German Armed Forces Command at their Dulles facility, starting at 5 o'clock. And then on November 15th, we have our big event, the Tower of Dulles Boards Dinner. And December 12th, we have the luncheon with Richard Golanowski, the airport manager. And as John had mentioned earlier, on November 20th, we will have Eric Jew with VEDP for a Zoom meeting at 3:30 p.m. Excuse me, I don't want to get up early in the morning. So 3:30 p.m. And we look forward to this. When he took this effort on to look at studying cargo possibilities out at Dulles, he was very excited. A lot of that to do with his background in the industry and what the possibilities were. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what he has to say. With that, thank you everybody for joining us this morning. This meeting has been recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel. So we appreciate everybody's participation. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
For having us.
Bye-bye.